Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Nathan and today we are doing our 7th class overview for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and today we are covering the monk. So here is our agenda for this video. I'm going to kind of talk about the class overview and what I believe the role of the core monk class is. Then we'll go through all of their features from level 1 to 20. I've broken that up into 5 level sections to make it easier. Then I'll talk about multiclassing the monk with other classes, and then I'll kind of do a summary and give the core monk class some ratings. Importantly, this video, like all my other class overviews, is not going to dive deep into all of the different subclasses. I'll rather give an overview of all of those and kind of the general gist of what the subclass features give you at each level. So let us jump in and into our class overview and role. So the monk is a martial-based character who is based on both dexterity and wisdom primarily. You can build a monk with strength, but they have some inherent issues with that. And monk as a class have a lot of things that modify the rules, and so a lot of interesting things that they bring to the table. So if I was going to kind of describe their role in party and combat, they are a skirmisher, and I would say a single target controller. Monks are pretty good at jumping on a dangerous target and locking them down, especially with one of their main features that'll come online at level 5. Additionally, the monks' resources in combat are based off of their ki, which is kind of this magical energy that they have in them, the strength of their spirit and that kind of thing. And importantly, all of your ki points come back on a short rest. So these are what's used to fuel all of your abilities. And so generally speaking, monks are going to be a short rest based class. It's also important to note that monks are naturally very mad or multiple ability score dependent. This is because they will use, they don't have any armor. And so the only way they can increase their armor class is with their unarmored defense feature, which uses their dexterity and their wisdom. Their wisdom is used for their saving throws they force, and their dexterity is typically used for their attacks. And because they're primarily melee, they usually want a good constitution score. And so naturally, your abilities are going to be pretty split between a bunch of different things just because of how the class is designed. There are a few classes in 5e that are like this, and monk is the first one on our list that we're coming to. All right, so class features at level 1. Well, first, monks are a d8 hit dice class. This is pretty standard for most casters, except for the squishier ones, but this is the pretty standard hit dice of most classes. Importantly, even though they're melee, this is not the same level of hit dice as the 3 other main martials that don't have a d12, so that would be fighter, paladin, and ranger. This is the same hit dice as a rogue. In terms of armor proficiencies, they're not proficient with any armor. As a matter of fact, a lot of their features will stop working if you wear armor or even use a shield. As for weapons, you are proficient with all simple weapons and short swords. As for tools, you get proficiency with 1 artisan's tool or 1 musical instrument at level 1. And then their saving throws, they are proficient in strength and dexterity saves at character creation. This can be helpful, especially if you dump strength in favor of having your dexterity, wisdom, and constitution be higher, and this can help you kind of be naturally resilient and better at athletics and that kind of thing. As for their skills, they get to pick 2 from the following list: acrobatics, athletics, history, insight, religion, and stealth. And kind of the core concept of the monk class in 5e is that you're like this martial arts priest from like a temple somewhere, and thus kind of the skill list. Very Eastern Kung Fu type things that vibes that the core class gives. Now, as for their other features, they get unarmored defense at this level. And so when they're not wearing armor or using a shield, they can calculate their armor class as 10 plus their dexterity modifier plus their wisdom modifier. And because you don't get to wear any armor as a monk, you are naturally going to heavily lean into this feature. And pumping those attributes is going to be the main way that you increase your armor class. There are a few magic items that you can use, but generally speaking, monks are pretty limited because, again, you can't wear armor. They also get the martial arts feature, and this is one I'll explain a little bit more, but at this level, it is a 1d4. So let's explain martial arts in a little more depth, because this is kind of an important feature and a core thing that makes monks work. So the first thing we need to understand about martial arts feature is, what is a monk weapon? Now, the rules define a monk weapon as short swords and any simple weapon that lacks the two-handed and or heavy properties. So in order to use your martial arts feature, you need to be wielding a monk weapon or unarmed, and you also need to be wearing no armor and not using a shield. So while you meet these conditions, you can use your dexterity and instead of your strength and for your attack and damage rolls with unarmed attacks and monk weapons. We can use our martial arts die, which is a d4 at this level, instead of the normal damage die for monk weapons or unarmed strikes. So normally unarmed strikes only do like 1 plus strength damage, but since we're a monk, they will do our martial arts dice plus our dexterity or strength, whichever one is higher. Additionally, on your turn, you can make an unarmed strike as a bonus action if you attacked with an unarmed strike or a monk weapon on that turn. So naturally, at early levels, this gives monk just a free bonus action attack. Admittedly, it's not like very significant, but you don't have to spend any feats and that kind of thing to get it. And overall, the kind of the monk at level 1 is actually really solid. You will be having 2 attacks per turn without any feats or anything else, and that's very solid in terms of whole character. Now, at level 2, monks get their key, and we will, from here on out, we will have a number of key points equal to our monk level. We get them all back on a short rest. Any feature that uses our key points that requires a save, the DC for that save is 8 plus our proficiency plus our wisdom. And then we get 3 options that we can spend key points on as a core monk. These are Flurry of Blows. So we can spend a key point immediately after we take the attack action to make 2 unarmed strikes as a bonus action. So this is kind of like if you need a little bit of extra damage, you can spend a key point to get that 3rd attack instead of just the bonus action attack from martial arts. We also have Patient Defense, which lets us take the dodge action as a bonus action. And then we have Step of the Wind, which lets us take the dash action or the disengage action as a bonus action, and it also doubles our jump distance for the turn. We also get Unarmored Movement here, and what this feature does is, again, while we're not wearing armor or using a shield, our movement speed increases by 10 feet. Now, monks are naturally they want to be in melee, but they also don't have a very good armor class. So what you want to do with a monk is skirmish. So run in, run out, and having this extra movement speed helps a lot with that. Of course, there's a natural problem here. If you're dealing with melee enemies, you'll have to either disengage or take an opportunity attack. And so solving that issue of provoking opportunity attacks is a big thing monks want to solve either with their race, their feats, or even some subclass features. Monk was also a class that got a big set of buffs out of Tasha's, and we get the first one here. It is the dedicated weapon feature. So what this does is over the course of a short or long rest, you can invest your key into a weapon and make it count as a monk weapon for you. Requirements are that it must be a simple or martial weapon. You must be proficient with it, and it can't have the heavy property or the special property. So what this lets you do is potentially use things you might have a racial proficiency in, like say a longsword if you were an elf, or a warhammer if you were a dwarf, and use those as monk weapons. So again, this is nice and is helpful to kind of expand the repertoire of things you can use as a monk weapon. Importantly, there's no limitation on using a monk weapon in 2 hands, provided it doesn't have the heavy or special properties. So the best thing a monk can do for damage, especially at early levels, is to use a versatile D8 weapon in 2 hands, and then you use it as a monk weapon. It'll be a D10, and you can still make your bonus action unarmed attacks, like say kicking or taking a hand off and punching or that kind of thing. At level 3, monks get a whole bunch of things. The first thing that they get is deflect missiles. So what this does is when you're hit with a ranged attack, you can use your reaction to reduce the damage by 1d10 plus your dexterity modifier plus your monk level. And if you reduce the damage to 0, you can spend a key point and throw that piece of ammunition back at the target, and it'll do damage equal to your martial arts dice plus your dexterity modifier. This is an okay thing. It can be useful to finish enemies off, but usually you have better things to use your key on. But this feature is nice in that it makes monks resilient against ranged attacks. which if you're skirmishing, you should be able to evade the melee enemies, but those range attacks can be harmful. So again, this will help there. They also get the key field attack feature here. Again, this is one that was added out of Tasha's. And what this says is that if you spend a key point as part of your action, you can make one unarmed strike as a bonus action on that turn. This is intended for a lot of subclasses that maybe spend key points with their action, but wouldn't otherwise qualify for the martial arts feature, and this is something that lets them do that. Also, at this level, we get our monastic tradition, our subclass, and these typically have some kind of core feature to the subclass that usually will involve spending your key points in some way, and then they potentially have a ribbon feature of some kind. Not all of them do, but some of them do. So the subclasses that are available, Monk has actually gotten quite a few, and a lot of people don't know about them because a lot of people don't play monks. So out of the player's handbook, we've got the 4 elements monk. This monk is kind of like like the Avatar character in some ways out of that particular TV show, but basically you can use your key to harness the elements, and the way that this is done mechanically is you can spend key points to cast a bunch of different versions of spells. Next, we have the open hand monk. This is also out of the player's handbook, and this one generally involves kind of like a advanced martial arts technique or involving pressure points and that kind of thing. So they can knock enemies prone and do all sorts of interesting things there, and they also have some self-healing. We also have the Shadow Monk, which is kind of like this ninja assassin, works in darkness, can teleport between shadows. From Xanathar's, we got the Drunken Master. So this is like someone who, it's like your classic drunken brawler, or at least they appear drunk, good at fighting large groups of enemies. We've got the Kensei Monk, which specializes in a weapon, and they have some additional things that they can do, and they're kind of designed to be a hybrid weapon user and monk, and they're actually one of the better options if you want to play a monk with a ranged weapon. We also got the Sun Soul Monk out of Xanathar's. This one is almost like a Dragon Ball Z character. You get an ability that lets you basically unleash blasts of radiant energy at range using your martial arts dice, and it's like a spell attack and that kind of thing. It still uses your dexterity, but kind of cool. The theme is really on point, but the numbers are pretty underwhelming. From Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, we got the Astral Self Monk. This one kind of manifests they have a powerful version of their key that manifests as like this bigger like astral body around them and that kind of thing. One of the cool things about this subclass in particular is it has a feature that lets you use your wisdom modifier with your unarmed strikes, and these monks can invest heavier into wisdom and not need to worry about investing into dexterity as much, which makes them rather interesting as options go because they're a little more single attribute dependent. They also have the Mercy Monk, which is kind of like a healer and wielder of necrotic energy, a little bit themed kind of off a Plague Doctor. Pretty cool class. And then from the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, we have the Long Death Monk, which is kind of like a monk that's made not to die. They have some things that they can do to avoid death. Pretty cool stuff. And then from Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, we got the Ascendant Dragon Monk, which is kind of focused on you have this martial technique that embodies powers of dragons and like draconic breath blasts and that kind of thing. All right, so at level 4, monks get their first ability score increase or feat, and they follow the normal feat schedule for most classes, so 5 total. Typically, monks are pretty strapped for stats. Again, we are a multiple attribute dependent class, and we want high dex for our armor class and our initiative and our attack and damage rolls. But we also want a high wisdom to, again, boost our armor class, but also make it easier for us to land all of our abilities because our save DC is based on our wisdom. At the same time, we are also a skirmisher, and so solving our opportunity attack issue is actually a big deal. And I personally think the mobile feat is really good on monks. What this does is it further increases your movement speed by 10 feet, and then any creature that you've made an attack against this turn, whether it hits or misses, can't make opportunity attacks against you. So if you can use this, run in, punch someone, and run out. Some of the subclasses, again, can solve this opportunity attack issue, but the feat is really good if you're not going to do that. They also get the slow fall feature here, and what this does is as a reaction, you can reduce the falling damage that you take by 5 times your monk level. So at this level, that's 20. The way that falling damage works is you take 2d6 for every like 10 feet that you fall. So even at this level, You would need to fall, let's see, 20 damage is, so 2d6 is 7 damage, so 21 damage. So basically, from falls of like 30 feet or less, you probably won't take any damage. And this is like a cool thing that monks can do. You can just jump off stuff. A little bit of a ribbon feature, but at the same time, it's pretty nice. They also get the quicken healing feature here. This is one that was added out of Tasha's. And as an action, you can spend 2 ki points and you can recover number of hit points equal to your one roll of a martial arts die plus your proficiency bonus. This is honestly really expensive. Can come in clutch at times, but I don't think this feature is very good. At level 5, monks get extra attack, like most martial classes. So when we take the attack action, we can now make 2 attacks on our turn instead of 1. Again, big with Flurry of Blows. A monk at this level can now make 4 attacks per turn. Admittedly, 2 of them will be with your monk weapon, so capped at 1d10 if you're using a versatile weapon that you naturally have proficiency with. But most importantly, at this level, monks get the Stunning Strike feature. And in my opinion, this is kind of the fulcrum that the whole monk class is balanced around. And the power of this feature is one of the reasons why monk, a lot of their other abilities are so weak. And let me explain how this works. So, when we hit an enemy with a melee weapon attack, so this can be attack with your monk weapon or an unarmed attack, you can spend a ki point to attempt to stun them. There's no limit to the number of stuns you can attempt per turn, but every attempt will cost 1 ki point. If you do, they have to make a Constitution saving throw against your ki save DC. So most enemies usually have a pretty good con save, and our Wisdom save usually isn't going to be super high, unless we're like an Astral Self and can focus Wisdom. But if they fail their save, they are stunned until the end of the monk's next turn. So not only will they miss their turn, but the monk will have a round of advantage attacks. And a monk at this level dumping all of their ki points into Stunning Strike could attempt 4 Stunning Strikes in 1 turn, assuming that all of their attacks hit. So 2 attacks from your extra attack, so 2 ki points there. Another ki point to do another 2 unarmed strikes with Flurry of Blows, so we're up to 3. And then if both of those land, you can attempt to strike 2 more times and spend all of your ki. And the reason this is so powerful is if you land even 1 stun, this enemy is potentially out of combat. They don't get to do anything on their turn because they're stunned. They can't use reactions, and the monk's allies are probably going to beat them up. And if you've ever DM'd a party that has a monk in it, it'll be really like you'll probably have an experience where the monk stunned your big bad enemy for that particular combat and they got destroyed. And so this feature is so powerful when it works. It doesn't always work, but when it does, it's one of those things that can totally flip an encounter in the favor of the players. So for that reason, I think that even though this is a very binary thing, either it works or it doesn't, and most enemies have a good con save, this feature has so much potential power that I think it's one of the reasons why Wizards has toned back a lot of the other features that the class gets. Also at this level, the monk gets the focused aim feature. What this does is when you make an attack roll, after you see the roll, you can spend 1 to 3 ki points, and you get to add +2 to your attack roll to hit per ki point you spent. Cool thing, one of the interesting things about this is this works with the Ki Field Strike feature, and that feature actually does not require you to make an attack with an unarmed strike. You can actually make an attack with an unarmed strike or a monk weapon. So the popular gunk or gun monk build will use this focused aim feature to get a bonus action attack with their gun, which is a pretty cool thing, and it's an interesting combination between focused aim and that Ki Field attack feature. Also at this level, our martial arts dice gets its first bump from a d4 to a d6, so that's an increase of 1 point damage average. All right, at level 6, monks get ki empowered strikes. So now our unarmed attacks count as magical for the sake of ignoring immunities to non-magical damage and that kind of thing. A nice thing to get here, and it is very nice because especially if you've been making a lot of unarmed attacks, which is what monks are all about, you want to make sure that those are applicable throughout the whole game, and making your attacks magical is a good thing to have. Oh, they also get their second subclass feature here. The power level on these varies pretty wildly. Some of them are very good, some of them are pretty weak, but they usually improve upon earlier features or kind of expand the identity of the subclass. And the unarmored movement also gets another bump here to 15 feet of extra movement. At level 7, monks get evasion. So what this does, this is a feature that they share in common with rogues. When you make a dexterity saving throw to like avoid damage, if you pass your save, you take no damage. And if you succeed on your save and would otherwise, so yeah, if you succeed on your save and would take half damage, you take no damage. And if you fail your save, you take half damage instead. And this is something that can make monks pretty darn resilient against things like fireballs and that kind of thing. Note that this only works on things that target dex saves and not things that target mental saves. They also get the Stillness of Mind feature here, and what this does is they can use their action to end one effect on themselves that is causing them to be charmed or frightened. And there's a little bit of an issue with this. There are a lot of those charm or frighten effects say that you have to use your action to do something else. So it's kind of up to your DM how this works. And I think this is intended that if you're under one of those effects, you can use your action to end it, even if it says you can't. And that's the way that I would play with it at my table. Now, an important thing to note about monks, pretty much from here on out, we don't really get anything that will going to improve our damage. Last level, we got a subclass feature which potentially helps, and you know we got those magical unarmed strikes. But a lot of the features that monk gets from here on out are pretty much ribbon features or defensive features, and your main offensive scaling is actually your key points, which is going to let you attempt to stun more. And this is going to kind of, again, lean into that single target controller. And I think one of the reasons why monks don't have a lot of scaling damage features as you get to higher levels, because of the power of having a lot of key points to attempt a lot of stuns. At level 8, monks get their second ability score increase or feat. You may have solved your opportunity attack issues with mobile, but otherwise you're probably bumping your dexterity or your wisdom here. There is an argument on monks to take a feat like Fey Touched to pick up a spell like Hex as a damage rider, because monks make a lot of attacks. So adding any amount of damage to those attacks is a big. At level 9, monks just get an unarmored movement improvement. It doesn't actually make them faster, but now you can move on vertical surfaces like walls and across liquids on your turn without falling. So you can run across water, you can run on walls. Actually, pretty good mobility thing, and can make a lot of encounters using terrain pretty interesting and let the monk do some silly fun things. The strongest offensive benefit at this level, again, is probably that ninth. At level 10, monks' unarmored movement gets another bump by another 5 feet, and monks get the Purity of Body feature, which makes them immune to disease and poison. Yeah, if you were a paladin, you'd have this at level 3, but this is mainly a ribbon feature. And again, the movement speed is nice, especially if you already have a way of dealing with opportunity attacks. At level 11, monks get another subclass feature. Again, the power level on these varies. They're usually pretty good, and these will usually build on earlier features or expand on the core identity of the subclass. And our martial arts dice is now bumped up to a D8. Importantly, this is another just single point of damage. We've gone from 3.5 on average to 4.5 on average. At level 12, monks just get their third ability score increase or feat. So again, probably increasing dexterity or wisdom. And if you haven't picked up a damage rider and want to do more damage, this is a good point to do so. At level 13, monks get Tongue of the Sun and Moon, and this is basically a ribbon feature. What this does is we understand all spoken languages, and any creature that can understand a language can understand what we say. No combat benefits. This is honestly a pretty dead level aside from the key point, which is a big deal if you're leaning into Stunning Strike, which you should be as a monk. At level 14, monks get Diamond Soul, and this is a huge, incredibly powerful feature. Very, very, very good defensively. What this does is it makes monks proficient in all saves. So you're now proficient in all of your attribute saves. This also includes death saving throws. And you can also spend 1 point to re-roll a failed saving throw, and you must use the second result. If you have to make more than one saving throw, this doesn't consume your reaction, but it does consume ki. We also get another bump to our unarmored movement at this level, up to a 25-foot boost. At level 15, monks get timeless body. Again, this is more of a ribbon type feature. What this does is we no longer suffer the frailty of old age, and we can't be aged magically, but we can still die of old age. And in addition, we no longer need to eat or drink. So this makes it. This is more of a flavorful thing. The not needing to eat or drink is nice if you're in a survival-based campaign, but I would like to think by level 15, your party already would have solved issues around. At level 16, monks get their 4th ability score increase or feat, and man, it has been a void in class features in the last few levels. So at level 17, we get our final subclass feature, the capstone of our subclass. The power level of these varies. Some of them are quite good. Some of them are pretty middling to weak. But it's usually a nice thing to get. And if you are going mostly monk and have gotten this far, you might as well keep going. Our martial arts dice gets its final bump here to a D10. At level 18, we get the empty body feature. And this gives us a couple options. First and foremost, we can spend 4 key points as an action to become invisible for 1 minute. This invisibility is unconditional, so it doesn't require concentration, nor does it end if we attack or do anything else. Additionally, while we're invisible like this, we are resistant to all damage except force. This is going to make your monk really, really resilient, actually. You basically can't be attacked, and a lot of spells aren't going to be able to target you, and even if you do get damaged, you're resistant to it. You can also spend 8 key points as an action to cast Astral Projection. There are some limitations on this version. It doesn't require material components, but you're the only one who can be projected. And our unarmored movement gets a final bump here up to a 30-foot movement speed increase, which is double the base movement speed that most classes have. At level 19, we get our 5th and final ability score increase or feat. Again, we're on the normal schedule. And at level 20, we get Perfect Self, which is the class capstone. And what this does is when you roll for initiative and have no key left, you regain 4 key points. I personally think this one is a very bad capstone. I think most of the time monks are going to be short resting between combats, and I find it highly unlikely in most game circumstances that you would ever be out of key points, assuming that you manage them pretty well. So overall, we basically haven't gotten hardly anything new for damage other than martial arts dice scaling since level 6, and we haven't really gotten anything for damage unless our class gave it to us. Some of those defensive features, though, that we've gotten, namely Diamond Soul and Empty Body, are incredibly powerful. All right, so let's talk a bit about multiclassing the monk. So, in order to take a level outside of monk, if you're a monk, or take your first level in monk as a different class, you must have a minimum of 13 dexterity and 13 wisdom. And this is kind of the first of these classes that has these double requirements. And this is honestly pretty steep. And when you take your first level in monk, if not your first class, you get proficiency in simple weapons and short swords, which probably won't help most classes. Now, in my opinion, what goes best with monk? So I think monk goes best with fighter, ranger, or rogue. All 3 of these classes have the same or matching stat requirements. Fighter needs 13 strength or 13 dex. Ranger needs 13 dex and 13 whiz, which is a match. And rogue needs 13 dex. So all of these work with your stats, and you can kind of use these to expand the martial abilities of the monk. In particular, I really like the ranger because they get the Hunter's Mark spell. They have some spell casting, which is a damage rider, which means you won't need to spend a feat to get one with something like Fate Touched. Fighter has Action Surge. You can potentially go Battle Master and get maneuvers and that kind of thing. And so these can help you kind of scale what your monk does after you stop scaling at monk 6. Fighter also has a fighting style that you can take to get to make your unarmed attacks a D8. And if you potentially dip a fighter level at level 1, you can have a D8 damage dice, which you normally wouldn't even get until like monk 11, which is kind of crazy. One of the other things that I like to note here is that just because you can attack with something with dexterity doesn't qualify it to make sneak attacks as a rogue. If you're going to dip rogue with monk, you need to actually use a weapon that has the finesse tag. All right, so a few other classes that monk can work with are cleric and druid. Both of these are wisdom-based spellcasters, and they have a 13 wisdom requirement. So these will line up with the requirement that you already have to multiclass out of monk. If you go into Druid, you can potentially do things like take some levels in Moon Druid, and you can use your unarmored defense as your Moon Druid wild shapes, which will improve your armor class. Importantly, the animal's natural weapons are not monk weapons, so you don't qualify for. They're not monk weapons or unarmed strikes, so you don't qualify make bonus action attacks, but you can still make unarmed strikes in your beast form and use your martial arts dice. So that's kind of an interesting one, but not like super stellar. But either way, both of these classes work because monks get a lot better when you have spell casting and can concentrate on something, and both of these are wisdom based casters. Now, generally speaking, monk dipping into other classes makes a much better monk. But oftentimes, dipping into those classes, you are a worse version of a pure version of that class. The important thing here is that Stunning Strike is so powerful that a lot of the classes balanced around that. And I think having a lot of key points to attempt stuns is one of the reasons why monks don't get a lot of powerful offensive class features at later levels. All right, so it's time to summarize and talk about ratings. So first up is offense. This is my rating on the monk's ability to do damage. And overall, I give the monk a 2 out of 5. This is a little worse than the barbarian. This is namely because, again, we don't get any features to scale our damage aside from mediocre martial arts scaling after level 6. While we do have 4 attacks, we don't hit very hard. And monks also have the issue where there aren't a whole lot of magic items you can get to help their offense. They don't have spell casting. There are a few. And if I was having a monk in one of my campaigns, I would make sure I would to give them items to help them. That kind of a thing. Yeah. Now that said, from like levels 1 to 6, I would say a monk is a 4-star damage dealer. The ability to make 2 attacks at level 1, 3 attacks at level 3, 4 attacks at level 5 and level 6. You're actually pretty solid there, especially if you've done something to improve your unarmed attacks, like taking a fighting style or have a damage rider of some kind. So monks can be very powerful at low levels, but your damage pretty much plateaus after level 6. Now, defensively, I give the monk a 3 out of 5. This is because, their armor class is generally not going to be the best. Again, we can't use armor. Magic items we can use to increase our armor class are somewhat limited, and you kind of have to be careful about making the monk too tanky as a DM. But there are some ones they can get, like bracers of defense or a cloak of protection and that kind of thing. They do have deflect missiles to block ranged attacks. They have evasion, and they have Diamond Soul at level 14 and Empty Body Invisibility at level 18. So if you get to high levels, monks are actually very durable, but they're pretty squishy in the low levels. You have to solve the opportunity attack thing. And so I would say their defense improves a lot over time, which is why I give them a rating right in the middle. All right, next up is Control, and I give the monk a 3-star rating here, and this is just because of the strength of Stunning Strike. It might take a while to have a high save DC for your key points, depending on how you invested your stats, because it's based on wisdom. And also, it targets Constitution saves, which are generally the highest saves among all monster saves in the game. But that said, when it does land, it is very powerful, and monks can potentially lock down big baddies, especially as they get to have more and more keys. For support, this is kind of their ability to help and protect their allies, and I give them a 2 out of 5 here. Again, this is just because of the ability monks have to stun people, and that can potentially get an enemy off your allies. So this ties a little bit into Control, but I think that ability to stun also lends them some effectiveness in support. As for skills, I give the monk a 1-star here. They don't have anything that helps their skills, and the skills that they get, you probably want to take things that might be combat focused. That said, they tend to have pretty good stats in dexterity and wisdom, which a lot of skills are based on, but they don't have anything exceptional. Finally, complexity. And this is a rating based on how difficult it is to play the class. Very closely tied to the number of choices you have to make either in combat or creating your character and that kind of thing. So a 5-star is very difficult and a 1-star is very easy. And I give the monk a 3-star rating. They have a lot of options that they can take between the things they spend their key on and all of their little ribbon features, whether it's like things like slow fall or deflect missiles and evasion and all that stuff. And so you also kind of need to solve the opportunity attack issue. And so they can be somewhat complex to play and are actually one of the more difficult martial classes in. So thanks for watching. This has been my class overview on Monk. What do you think? Have you played a Monk? Do you agree with what I have to say about Stunning Strike? Yeah, please let me know in the comments. Monk was is one of my favorite classes thematically. They're actually really powerful in 4th edition, and I still enjoy playing them in 5th. And just because they're kind of considered weaker than other classes doesn't mean they're not a fun character to play and bring to the table. So once again, my name is Nathan. Thanks for watching, and our next class overview will be on, I think it's Paladin. So I'm really excited about that. See you next time.